Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but I think it's most definitely fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of Imperial Stouts. Now, the one that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases through Systembolaget over here, and this is supposed to be really nice actually. So I have to say I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Arlöv, just to the northeast of Malmö here in Skåne, in the very south of Sweden, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Nerd Brewing. So this particular beer is called Classcast. It comes in at 10.2% ABV, and this one is another Imperial Stout. Nerd Brewing are calling it an Imperial Milk Stout, and it's got caramel and tonka beans added into the brew. So yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokal Osmoskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for December of 2021, and this review is actually a little bit special because this is my Swedish Christmas Day review for 2021, the 25th of December. So a huge thank you to all of you for your support over the course of 2021. We've got many more reviews to come over 2022, of course, but relax today, chill with your family, enjoy some nice beer, and just have a good time. Hopefully 2022 is going to be a little bit better than 2021 and 2020, of course. But yeah, always nice to return to Nerd Brewing, and I think this is a good Christmas Day beer. I also hope that you enjoyed my Scottish review that I did, my Scottish Christmas Day review. I do have a very nice beer that I'm keeping aside for that one, but this review was actually filmed before that one. But yeah, two very nice Christmas Day reviews, I think, for the channel. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. Very nice to return to Nerd Brewing. I think my last review from these guys was back in, maybe April or something like that. I've not had a beer from these guys in quite some time actually. But yeah, let's go for it. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Nerd Brewing in the past, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regularly these days because I'm back over in the south of Sweden. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Nerd Brewing once again then. So, Nerd Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Arlöv near Malmö, but the roots of the company are of course in Malmö. But the company was founded by Hannes Gruber and Karin Karlsson back in 2015, and their first event was their premiere at the Malmö Öl and Whiskey Festival. But both of these guys were big beer enthusiasts, and they just kind of wanted to break into the industry. So Hannes had been a home brewer for a long time, and he got very good feedback on his beers, and so it was this that really inspired him to turn into a professional brewer. So he comes from a background in software development, and he in the early days he was taking care of the brewing side of things, but his background in software development is why they have a lot of the beers have programming related names. Karen, on the other hand, is an entrepreneur, and she had a background as a trader in the IT company, but she is no longer involved in the company. She's not been involved in it for quite a few years actually, but they started up with a very modest production, but they became the most highly rated brewery in Sweden very, very early on in their history. But the beers were originally produced at the Lilla Ölfabriken Chad beer facility in Rosengård, Malmö. There were a few produced at the South Plains brewery just next door, but the company officially joined with Chad beer and Lilla Ölfabriken to form a collective, but then they continued to sell their beers under their own brands. But Nerd Brewing were brewing mainly Imperial Stouts, but they have at times released IPAs, barley wines and a few others. These days, of course, they've got a few different barrel-aged things as well, actually. But in the early days, other than a few beer festivals around Sweden, it was actually very, very difficult to get a hold of the different Nerd Brewing beers. But from 2018, they started selling their beers through Systembolaget, the national monopoly in Sweden. And they've just been kind of growing quite well ever since, actually. They've been growing very well since their inception, right enough. But in March of 2021, a new collective called Molecule was formed, and this includes Elm 11, who do some awesome sour beers, Nerd Brewing, of course, and also Chad Beer. And the Chad beers are, the stuff released under Chad Beer tends to be the more kind of sessionable and just light drinkable stuff. But these guys have got their new brewery in Arlöv, which is in an industrial unit, and it starts off with a 1,500 litre brew can. They've got quite a lot of space to expand over the next little while, of course. But as of December 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 110 different kinds of beer under the Nerd Brewing brand. But basically, as I say, you've got this Molecule parent company, you've got the Elm 11 stuff, which is the big fruity juicy sours, you've got the Nerd Brewing things, which are the big Imperial Stouts, and you also have the Chad Beer stuff, which is the more kind of sessionable, you know, the IPAs and the lagers and stuff like this. But mainly it's the Elm 11 and the Nerd stuff that's being distributed quite a lot at the moment. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Nerd Brewing for the moment. These guys are one of the Swedish breweries that you really need to check out if you haven't done so already, but they do some awesome stuff. And yeah, I hope that you guys can get the chance to try some of these. But yeah, if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is it for your history section. The only other thing I can really say about this brewery is that one of the things that they always talk about is open source brewing. So basically, Hannes makes all of his recipes available online. There's quite a few of them on the website, of course, but he always says if there is one that's missing, just to email him and he'll make it available. So yeah, open source brewing just refers to the fact that you can get the recipes for all of these different Imperial Stouts. But like we say, 10.2% ABV this one. This is the Classcast, an Imperial Milk Stout with caramel and tonka beans. It looks very, very nice. So yeah, nicely presented beer, this one. As you can see, it's got that lovely wax top on it, which you always get from Nerd Brewing. And if you do want to learn a little bit more in depth about the story of Nerd Brewing, you can have a little look at my Meet the Brewery interview that I did with Hannes. That's a couple of years ago now that I did that, actually. But yeah, that was really fun to do that. And I think that was the very first one that I filmed, if memory serves me correctly. That was in the old brewery in Rosengård. But yeah, go and check that out. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Classcast Imperial Milk Stout with caramel and tonka beans. Let's get stuck into this. See if I can get this in. This might take a wee second just to get it open. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we are. Finally, yeah, some of these wax top ones, they can be a bit of a pain to open, but this one wasn't too difficult actually. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we get on. Ooh, look at that. Absolute sludge. Love it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, this beer, 330 milliliter bottle, of course. I believe this one cost me about, I want to say, 80 Swedish kroner. So that translates to roughly, it translates to roughly €8. So that will be about £7 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $9 American for this. So for a big 10.2% Imperial Stout, that is definitely not bad. So yeah, anyway, as you can see, and as you would expect, this one has poured a lovely big dark ebony rosewood colour. I'm surprised that there's no head on this, but in fairness, when it's 10.2%, it's not so much of a surprise. There's a nice little foamy ring just around the edge of the glass there, but you know, absolutely nothing on top of it. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but I mean, overall, it does look very, very nice. If you shine the light through this one, it is pretty much opaque. There's not a lot of light coming through this at all, but there is a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi type edge to it. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining the EBC rating of your beer. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Nerd Brewing use very, very long wort boils, of course. I've seen that. They actually leave some of their stuff to kind of boil in the wort overnight, actually. I've seen that. So yeah, these guys use very, very long wort boils quite a lot of the time. But any adjuncts that you put into the beer can, of course, affect the colour of it, and any barrel aging that you do will affect it too. But when it comes to imperial stouts, you don't see such a big difference in the colour. Those two variables tend to be more applicable to, you know, different sour beers and stuff like this. But in terms of what you would expect from the appearance of an imperial stout, this one, there's nothing really surprising about this, to be quite honest with you. A lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, and this, you can see the alcohol in this. It's, you know, leaving that nice little bit of lacing around the edge of the glass there. Just look at that beautiful looking beer. But yeah, this I think should be really interesting. So other than that, nothing that we really need to say about the appearance. Let's move on to the aroma and just see how we go with this beer. As I say, really looking forward to this. Oh, that smells absolutely beautiful. Just going to say straight away, thumbs up to Hannes and Nerd Brewing once again for this. Yeah. So aroma wise, this beer is most definitely, most definitely just a big oily sweet thing. This, you know, you can smell it's Imperial Milk Stout all the way. Does this one, does it have lactose in it? Yeah, it does. So yeah, this one has malt, barley malt, oats and lactose in it. It makes sense. But yeah, the aroma of this is really nice. One of the things I've always liked about the Nerd Brewing beers, and I've said this in previous reviews, they always just have a little bit of roasty toastiness to them, and that lets you know, yeah, this is an Imperial Stout. So I'm curious to see whether that's going to show its head in this particular beer, because I think this one is probably one of the sweetest aromas I've come across from Nerd Brewing thus far, actually. But yeah, this I think is going to be really nice. I'm a big fan of tonka beans. These give you those really interesting vanilla flavours and that lovely kind of fibrousy, smooth quality to them. Just really, really strong flavours. And caramel, of course, you can't really go wrong with that in an Imperial Stout, especially an Imperial Milk Stout. So yeah, this will be pretty awesome. Yeah, looking forward to this for sure. But yeah, let's just break down the aroma of this one and see how we go. But I will say straight away, you can smell this is a really big, thick, silky Imperial Stout. Absolutely love it. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so backbone of this beer then, you can smell a little tiny hint of that roasty toasty, you know, black malty sort of thing coming out of this one. I think Hannes always loved special B malts. I think there is a wee bit of that in there, but the sweetness of the adjuncts and things is covering up a lot of the kind of, you know, rawness and blackness and dryness that you would normally get from that type of malt. So pretty certain that it's in here, but not 100% sure, of course. But you can smell a little bit of that roasty toasty sort of thing. On top of that, you do get a wee touch of breadiness out of this one, and again, that takes a back seat because of the sweetness and oiliness of the beer. But within that, you can smell the sort of fibrous character of the tonka beans. You can really just smell that, you know, fibrousy tonka bean sort of thing. So yeah, nice, as I say, a nice bready character in there. The tonka bean coming out, you can smell the vanilla sort of flavours from the tonka beans as well, but they're just very, very unique. Tonka beans are really difficult to describe, actually. For me, it's just that fibrousy, kind of chickpea, black beany sort of aroma that you get out of them, but you've also got that big, vanilla type quality to them as well. So aroma-wise, this is really, really nice from that perspective. You're getting, for me, I actually get quite a lot of nuttiness out of this beer. It almost smells like almonds and pecans or something like this. It's a very sweet, nutty character that you get out of this one. But as we say, a little bit of vanilla coming out of it for sure. Yeah, nice little bit of vanilla for me. And then on top of that, you can smell the kind of creaminess of this beer, which is really interesting. So there's a bit of chocolate to it, but the chocolatey side of it is kind of interesting. So like on top of the kind of bean, the tonka bean layer with the vanilla and things, you can smell there is a bit of a kind of sweeter chocolate side of things. So it's about a 40, you know, it's about 40% cocoa chocolate out of this one. It does come across as really milky and chocolatey in that sense, but it's also got a little bit of that almost like cocoa nib dryness to it, which is really interesting. But then sitting on top of that, you can smell the oaty character of this beer. The oats, I think, are the things that really are smoothing out a lot of the aromas in this beer. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that dry cocoa nibby chocolate out of it. You can smell a bit of the creaminess from the oat, and I think that's helping promote the vanilla as well. But then you've got that big sweet caramelly character out of this one. And the caramel for me is actually interesting because, like I said, these beers, Nerd Brewing, they tend to have very, very long wort boils, and when you boil the wort for that long, the brown sugar starts to get this kind of almost leathery feel to it. But the brown sugars in this beer are actually quite bright and quite sweet for me, so I do like how that, again, I do like how that goes together in this particular beer. So yeah, the brown sugary notes for me, you do get a little bit of that leatheriness in there underneath, but there's quite a bright, sweet, caramelly note to it, which I really, really enjoy. So yeah, there's a whole host of different things going on in there. So like we said, there's a wee bit of bread crust. You get a bit of a kind of a bit of a brown bread in there. You can smell the tonka beans and that kind of fibrousy quality. A little bit of a vanilla note in there. Some, you know, sweet 40% cocoa milk chocolate, you know, a little bit of cocoa nibs, of course. Vanilla, as we've said, the brown caramelly sugars. There's a lot of stuff going on in this one. A really, really nice malty backbone to it. So yeah, I think that works. Let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of the beer then. I don't think we really need to say any more about the malty side of it. And this is where the complexity is going to be, of course, on the malty side of things. But yeah, on the hoppy component of the beer, you do have a little bit of a green component there. You get a wee touch of earthiness to it. I can pick up little remnants of a kind of floral aromaticity and a wee bit of grassiness, but of course these things really take a back seat to the malty side, but you do get quite a nice little bit of fruity character out of this one. So for me, there's a wee bit of you get a little touch of a raisiny character out of this one. I do really like that. So a little bit of a raisiny note, some nice kind of plummy characters underneath. So yeah, a wee bit of sharp raisin, nice little bit of a plummy note, and you've also got a little bit of a kind of you do get a little bit of a kind of light figgy character out of this, and that's really interesting too. So yeah, a little bit of sharp raisin, juicy plum underneath, wee bit of a fig, and then I get quite a lot of black currant out of this. I'm not sure it's quite tart enough to be blackberry, but you're getting these big typical oily blackberry red fruity type notes out of this one. So I'm curious to see how those are going to transpire when it comes to the actual flavour of this beer. But as I always say, take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of it before you get stuck in. This is definitely one of the sweeter and kind of silkier ones that I can remember from Nerd Brewing actually. So yeah, this is going to be good. So this one is the Classcast an Imperial Milk Stout at 10.2% ABV with caramel and tonka beans from Nerd Brewing in Arlöv near Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. My Swedish Christmas Day review. Let's get stuck into this one. Slanja, skål, and cheers. Merry Christmas. Ooh. Yeah, this is definitely a nice Christmas beer, this one. Yeah. First impression of it is it's got that, you know, it almost has that like eggnoggy Imperial Stout kind of vibe to it, you know, that sort of spicy, bready, Christmassy thing that you want. That's another beautiful, beautiful beer from Nerd Brewing actually. So just a big thumbs up to Nerd Brewing for this one. Yeah, I think that works really well. So on the just overall, I'm just going to say this is very, very nice. It does feel a bit different from the other Nerd Brewing beers that I've had before, but like I said, the thing you always get with Nerd Brewing, you always get a bit of that roasty, toasty bitterness and things that just lets you know, yeah, this is an Imperial Stout, and you do get a wee bit of that from this one. So again, thumbs up to Nerd Brewing for this. It's got a bit of that signature Nerd Brewing roasty toastiness that you want from these beers. But this is a big, silky, smooth, thick Imperial Stout. going to enjoy sipping on this for the rest of the evening, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, where do we start with this one then? Yeah, so we'll focus on the middle third of your palate just now as always. So, backbone of the beer. Absolutely, you get a bit of that kind of toasty, well-fired, bread crusty character there. It's not so dry and raw in a sense, but you can feel that is the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you get the nice kind of, you get a nice little layer of a kind of wholemealy, brown bready sort of thing to it. So I really like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, the way that bready backbone, the bread crust and the brown bready sort of thing, for me that's the kind of signature, if you like, of Nerd Brewing, because you will feel it gets a bit drier and slightly more bitter toward the back of the palate, but you know, the middle of your palate's got all these layers of complexity. So a little bit of bread crust, brown bready sort of thing. Then on top of that, you're getting the kind of drier, cocoa nibby, chocolatey sort of vibe. So toward the back of that middle third of your palate, you do actually get a slightly more intense, 70-80% cocoa chocolate. But as you move further forward, it just evolves to be a little bit more. It evolves to be a little bit more like a milk chocolate. You can feel it becomes like a 30-40% cocoa chocolate actually. So yeah, I do like how this one goes about its business in that perspective too. So, yeah, that's very, very nice. The chocolate, it actually has a little bit more oiliness and things to it. It's not quite as dry and cocoa nibby as I was picking up in the aroma. So that's an interesting point to make about this one. But sitting on top of the chocolate, this is when you start to get the kind of fibrousy, you start to get that sort of fibrousy vibe from the tonka beans. Although, in fairness, it's a bit difficult to distinguish between those three layers. The kind of brown bread, the tonka bean, and the chocolate. It's a bit difficult to say, what order are they coming in, but it does have that typical kind of layered vibe to it. But I think the tonka beans are sitting on top of that sort of chocolatey, cocoa nibby layer. But toward the front of the middle third of your palate, you're getting a bit of that pecan-y, nutty type vibe to the beer, and then the vanilla kind of sits on top of it. But behind that, you get the big, thick, oily, brown sugary notes coming out of the beer. So yeah. So yeah. The brown sugary notes on this, you can feel they do have a little bit of that kind of leathery note to them, so you can really feel that in this beer. You've got that lovely kind of leathery brown sugary quality there, and you can just feel that it almost has a wee bit of a slightly woody character to it, which is interesting. But on top of the thicker kind of layer, the thicker layer of the caramel, I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's like treacle and molasses, but you can certainly feel just how thick and caramelised these brown sugars are. But so it's the brown sugar is quite layered. You get a bit of a toasty brown sugary layer underneath. You get that thicker treacly molasses sort of thing on top of it. But like I say, the flavour isn't quite as dark as treacle and molasses, but you've got all those leathery notes in it. But then in the dead centre of your palate, you've got a little circle there where the sweeter side of the caramel comes out, and right in the centre of your palate, that's where the main booziness of the beer is. So the middle third of your palate is where you're getting all the complexity in this. So you've got the bread crust, the brown bread, the sort of cocoa nibby chocolatey sort of layer. Then you get the tonka beans, the bit of nuttiness towards the front, and the wee bit of vanilla in there. Then you get all these brown sugar layers, the toasty caramel, the thicker sort of treacly thing, and then you get the wee sweet caramel sitting on top of that. So it's a very, very layered beer, this one, but it's got that lovely big just thickness to it that you expect of these Nerd Brewing Imperial Stouts. So yeah, it's definitely a sipper, this beer, and I'm going to enjoy just polishing this one off over the next hour or two. But yeah, middle third of your palate, and this one has so much complexity to it, and it does feel quite different from what we've had in Nerd Brewing in the past. But the thing I like about it is it really does show you a little bit of that roasty toasty side of things, and for me that's the signature of Nerd Brewing. You get all these different flavours, but it always just has this roasty toasty backbone to it, which I think most of which I think can be attributed to Special B. That's one of Hanness's favourite malts actually. So yeah, don't want to put words in his mouth, but most of his recipes seem to have Special B in them. But anyway, let's focus on the back third of your palate then and the rest of the beer. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up there, a wee bit of a bread crust. Then the base of that back third of your palate is a little bit more, base of that back third of your palate, you've got a little bit more of a kind of roasty toasty, bread crusty sort of thing, as we say. On top of that you get a wee bit of brown bread, and the layer, that layer is a little bit thicker of course, and then on top of that you're getting some of the yeasty notes out of the beer. So the back third of your palate is a little bit more kind of straightforward. So yeah, bit of well-fired toasty bread crust. On top of that, the kind of brown bready sort of thing, more grainy of course, and then you've got the yeasty notes. So the yeasty note for me is like a little bit more of a dense bready dough sort of thing. You've got a wee bit of a kind of peppery kind of toasty bread crusty sort of thing around it. So the back third of your palate isn't too complex, but you can certainly feel that the flavour of the beer is a little bit taller, and as you come further forward it just condenses down a wee bit. Then into the middle third of your palate the flavour just squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I really like how that goes together in this beer too. So yeah, lovely malty yeasty side of things to this one, but that's not a surprise if you know this brewery, definitely not. Let's focus on the hoppy and the fruity side of things then. So yeah, on the hoppy side of the beer, there's a nice little bit of earthiness in there for sure, but as you come further forward with this one you do get a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you push towards the front corners of the palate there's a little bit of the remnant of a floral aromaticity. So yeah, nice little bit of floral aromaticity there. Then around the front curve of the palate you get a little touch of a light grassiness coming out of this one, which again I can really appreciate. I really like that about this beer for sure. So yeah, other than that I don't think there's too much to say about the hoppy side of things then. But yeah, mainly a smooth hoppy character, just a little bit of a green component for sure, but again, if you don't put the hops in these beers you don't get to the same level of complexity with them. But let's focus on the front third of your palate then, just to round off the flavour section of the video. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that sort of bready build up in this one. You can feel that nice little bit of bread crusty character in there. Then the base of that front third of your palate, you've got it's like you do get a little bit of that toasty bread crust, but at the same time it's a little bit more like a kind of raw brown wholemeal bready sort of thing. And then on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So on the fruity side of things you've got a nice little bit of you've got a nice little bit of a kind of raisiny character just on. You get a nice little bit of a raisiny character just on top of that. So yeah, a little bit of a sharper kind of raisiny sort of thing. Nice kind of juicy oily plum character underneath that. So yeah, a little bit of a raisiny sharpness, wee bit of juicy plum underneath. And as you come further forward, it starts to get a little bit more kind of lighter and figgy, if that makes sense. And then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of black curranty sort of thing, then an oily blackberry as you reach the very front tip of the tongue. Just a wee bit of sharpness in there as well. But yeah, I do like how that goes together. But yeah, I think the fruity side of this beer is nice and oily and just kind of quite sweet actually. But the thing that's interesting is that underneath, of course, you've got a little bit of the dryness. So the fruity side of this beer, it's got the nice oily characters that we'd expect, but the dryness of this beer, the thing that really lingers in this one for me in terms of aftertaste is that bread crusty and brown bready dryness there. So it does give you the kind of spicy character you'd expect of a sort of winter release, a winter stout sort of thing. So yeah, This is an interesting beer for sure, but it gets a thumbs up from me. Once again from Nerd Brewing. It's been a wee while since I've had one of their beers, and this one certainly hasn't disappointed actually. I thought it might be a little bit sweeter than it actually is, but you know, when you get into it you realise, you know, the roasty toasty side of things, that's where Nerd Brewing kind of shine with their beers. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But this is a really, really nice one. So again, a big thumbs up to Nerd Brewing for this one. But let's round off the review then with a little quick look at the mouthfeel. So it's definitely a full-bodied beer, there's no doubt in my mind about that. You know, carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a lovely big slick oily mouthfeel. In terms of IBUs, I think this one is a bit difficult to say because it's actually got quite a little bit of a kind of grainy bready dryness to it, and you could easily conflate that with IBU. So to me, this beer feels as if it might be, you know, like sort of 70-ish IBU beer. But like I say, it's difficult to distinguish between the hoppiness and the kind of grainy side of it. But yeah, nice kind of bready, sort of thing. And then the malt base has, you know, dryness, smoothness, and a bit of sweetness to it. Then you've got a lovely kind of oily, red fruity character coming out of this one as well. So yeah, this beer gets a big thumbs up from me. I really like what this one, how this one goes about its business, but definitely quite a spicy, dry, bready sort of winter stout, which is, you know, what you would expect from this one when it's released in December. But yeah, awesome stuff. So let's leave it at that for this review. This one was the Classcast, a 10.2% Imperial Milk Stout with tonka beans and caramel from Nerd Brewing in Arlöv near Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Another very, very nice beer. And I'm going to go away and sip on the rest of this one. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this one in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Nerd Brewing, and we will return to these guys at some point soon. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Slange, skull, cheers. Make sure you check out Nerd Brewing from over here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Ciao just now.